Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Jane Nichols Bishop from Peak Season Workforce, and we're going to be talking about foreign workers and other summer employment issues on the Cape. Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Now, let's begin by explaining what your business is and what it does.
We help employers here on Cape Cod and the islands get their international temporary summer help. And this is they supplement, if you will, the American workforce that all businesses bring here to the Cape and Islands.
Now, how did you get into this line of work? It's a little different.
It is very different. It just started out with one of my husband's clients in his consulting business saying, I have a very hard time finding workers. How do I do that? And my husband said, my wife used to work for J1 workers, which is another type of international workers, and a business was born.
Now, the seasonal employment business is huge on the Cape and Islands. What are the numbers? How many people do we have here from overseas every year, approximately?
The number has fluctuated between 3,000 to about 8,000, depending on the year and the economy. I think we're right about 5,000 now for Cape and Islands with their international workforce.
During the recession, we probably had many less.
That's correct. When the recession came, many of the H-2B workers, which is a special category of workers that we specialize in, that diminished, as did the J1, which is the student international workers, because more Americans would take temporary seasonal jobs. They needed them.
Now, the other thing that varies is where they come from.
The H-2B workers come, for the most part, from Jamaica, Bulgaria, Romania, Philippines, South Africa, and then with a few other countries scattered in. The J1 workers mostly come from Eastern Europe, although we are starting to see a few Jamaican workers come in, because a J1 worker, it has to be a college student.
And how about in past years?
We were seeing a lot of the Irish. And they simply are not coming anymore. Their economy is better. The EU is a stronger economy as a whole, and so they can simply go back and forth, which is a lot easier for them than going across the Atlantic and coming here to us.
Now, what kinds of jobs do these workers do?
These are usually unskilled, lower-level, truly seasonal, temporary jobs. So they are dishwashers, they are counter attendants, ice cream vendors, landscape laborers, short-order cooks, things that you need in the shorter season versus somebody that's year-round. These are not year-round positions.
And these jobs used to, back in the day, they were held by college students, I know, because I was one of them. And so what happened to all that?
The Cape Cod and Island season stretched longer than Labor Day. Colleges started earlier, and you will see even high school kids going back to school the beginning of August. Our season has extended into October, sometimes November. So you can't not wait on your customers between middle of August till beginning of November. The same is true in the spring. Schools don't get out now till mid-May, sometimes later. We need the workers starting in April in some cases.
Now, we've already mentioned two different types of visas, so maybe you can explain them, the H-2Bs and the J-1s, because they're very different and they're for different people.
Correct. A J-1 visa is for a college student, international college student. They are very limited in the time they can come. It's usually for 3 or 4 months, and then they have 1 month to travel and be a tourist because it is a cultural visa. It's not a work visa, but they can work on it. The other is a work visa. It is called an H-2B. It is a temporary work visa given to an employer, not a worker. Then the employer hires their workers. Employer is responsible for those workers and has an obligation to work them a certain number of hours, pay them a certain wage, and take care of them, if you will, while they're here. They're their responsibility.
And how many do we typically have on the Cape of each type? Do we have more of one than the other?
It used to be that we had more H-2Bs. Then that dropped. We went into more J-1s. Now I think we're probably pretty balanced with the number. It is hard to get your hands around that number because J-1s travel. They go, they may start in South Dakota, but they may end up on the Cape and Islands because we're a very desirable place for a temporary seasonal worker to work.
And the H-2Bs, we know that's used by businesses all across the country. Isn't that right?
That's correct. It is used in almost every state in the United States. There are not enough of them available, so we have what's called a visa cap. The H-2B program is constantly under siege because it is managed by 3 government agencies who don't always see eye to eye and have perhaps different procedures and regulations to go through.
For the business that wants to bring the workers over, tell me what's involved in that.
It is, to do an H-2B, it is a 4-step process. Every step is a different government agency or a different section of this government agency. So you've got the Department of Labor involved, 2 different agencies. You have Department of Homeland Security. Then you have at an embassy, Department of State. And that program has been under siege since about 2007, 2008. It's constantly in change and flux. Nobody can quite decide what happens. And lately there have been some court rulings that have been interpreted by different government agencies so that it has stopped the program and right now has caused a bit of a problem for our area.
What's going on with this year?
What has happened is a judge in North Florida, there was a lawsuit against the Department of Labor. She ruled against the Department of Labor, said the Department of Labor did not have the authority to participate in the H-2B program, which they do not. And so she stopped them from doing and joined them and said, you can't do this anymore. The law actually says it's Department of Homeland Security who plays in this field. Department of Homeland Security gave a lot of the responsibility to the Department of Labor, and they did not have the authority to do that. That's why this whole program ground to a halt. USCIS, which is part of Homeland Security, also stopped. We don't know if those were sympathy pains or it was their interpretation, but the good news is both agencies are processing again, albeit a little late.
And so for some people, is it too late?
It's too late to start the process for this year. We actually start the process in October and November of the previous year, so workers can start coming in April and May. It takes that long. There is also going to be, probably will be, a delay in workers arriving this year because so many people have been stuck right now at the Department of Labor, step 2 in a 4-step process. Now they're stuck at Department of Homeland Security, step 3 in the 4-step process. They are processing again, but Department of Labor will only process through April 15th. The judge has said they can process through then, and that's it. Then it's done. So there will be no more.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're talking about summer employment and foreign workers. For many businesses, there are people that come back every year.
That's correct. We've had some workers who've been here for over 20 years. They come every summer, they go home, they're with their families back home, and then they come back the following year. What I think is going to happen for this year, though, is that because many businesses did get through, they're already through the embassies, workers already have airline tickets to come. That's the good part. There are a few of them that are now delayed and stuck. And at Department of Homeland Security, there is a process that almost everyone on Cape and Islands does, which is you pay a little extra money with your filing fees, well, $1,225 more, and you can get an answer in 15 days. It's called premium processing. And Department of Homeland Security has suspended that. That means instead of that being approved up there, which is a step you must have in 15 days, it now can take 30 to 60 days. So there is a chance that many of the workers may be coming late because the embassies will also be backed up with appointments.
And so what effect do you think this will have on the Cape's economy this year?
I think it will be tough at the beginning for a few businesses. Certainly not all, but there will be some who will feel the pinch of their workers not coming. So employers will just have to put in more hours themselves, work the Americans that they have here more, work the J1s, they have more until their major part of their workforce, the H-2B, can get here. So it's instead of the perfect wave of, here come my Americans, here come my H-2Bs, here come my J1s, and then they depart, they will just be arriving late. So they'll just be working a little bit harder at the very beginning.
These are really 10-month visas, and it's pretty much adhered to. Is that right?
Correct. It's anywhere between 8 to 10 months, depending on the business. The workers almost always go home or go to another H-2B job, a winter job. These are not like visitor visas where people just disappear. They're highly tracked, highly monitored. Both the company and the workers have gone through the Department of Homeland Security and security checked. So these are the ones who do it all right. They pay their taxes just like you and I. They file tax returns. They even pay into Social Security, even though they probably never collect it.
Businesses actually have to prove they can't find the U.S. workers for these jobs.
Correct. Everybody who brings in an H-2B worker has to put this job on a state job bank for more than 10 days or more. They have to place ads in local newspapers, interview every American that applies, and offer a job to them first. It always is Americans first. So the H-2Bs actually supplement. And if you were to look at some statistics, for every H-2B worker who is here, they help to create or sustain 4.64 American jobs.
And that's an interesting statistic you and I have talked about in the past. Why don't you explain that a little bit?
For example, if you have an H-2B worker who's working in the kitchen of a restaurant, and they are the dishwasher or they're the food prep worker, they're doing that for the American cooks, for the American servers, for the patrons who are simply there looking for this. So if you took those positions away, there isn't someone to take that job. So the restaurant might have to cut back on their meal service, cut back on the number of tables they will fill. The same is true in housekeeping. If you have an H-2B housekeeper, they help to sustain and create jobs for the front desk workers, for perhaps the bartenders, for the bellhops, all of those kinds of positions. And if they're not there, then the hotel rooms could be taken out of service, not rented. That affects the overall economy here. So there was a study done truly showing that for every H-2B worker, it helps to create and sustain 4.64 American jobs. That's a pretty big number.
It is a big number and surprising. Now, why do you think U.S. workers don't want these jobs?
Most U.S. workers want a year-round job with benefits. These are not year-round jobs. These are temporary jobs. No H-2B worker is hired for 12 months or 24 months or anything. It is not what this job is. These jobs are truly, dishwasher, housekeeper, that sort of thing. Americans really want a full-time job. If you're a college student, you would prefer not to be the dishwasher. You'd prefer to be the server or the dining room attendant. You would prefer not to be the housekeeper. You would instead want to be the front desk. Or if you're going to college as an American worker, you would really want to work in perhaps an internship or something within your field. That's what happens.
Now, one thing these workers do is they make for a very diverse environment here on the Cape. In the summer, you can meet people from all over the world, and particularly Eastern Europe, for example. Isn't that right?
That's correct. And people even talk about the fact that you went to a restaurant and you met someone from Uzbekistan, or you met this delightful person from Romania, or there was somebody here from Zambia or South Africa. And it does make our culture quite diverse, and it's also a great deal more fun to see the interesting things. Some people here haven't been to our cold ocean, and that's an interesting surprise to them. Or for the very first time, they go into our library system, which is a little different, or ride on our trolleys, or go into our grocery stores. It's a great time to see them in the grocery stores, not just shopping, but working as well. It's quite different than theirs.
I'm sure there are issues with finding housing for these workers.
That isn't a problem and an issue. A lot of employers do provide housing for their workers, or they find group housing, but housing is an issue. I think that there is a big push on to find housing for these workers a little better than what they are. And I think eventually that will be solved. If you're an employer, you need to house your workers.
What is the thing that would surprise most people about these workers?
That the H-2B workers don't want to be American citizens. They want to go home to their families. They don't live here. They work here. You don't live where you work. They want to go home.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. I've been talking to Jane Nichols Bishop of Peak Season Workforce. We've been talking about the summer economy and workers from overseas. Thank you, Jane, so much for being with me here today.
My pleasure.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.